Okay, a lot going on football-wise. We got a big week. Eagles, 49ers, Sunday, little rematch from the NFC Championship game. Something Schefter said about the potential openings in terms of jobs coming. And then we'll just fly around some other football stuff that I'm excited to talk about. But first, subscribe to the channel wherever you may listen. I appreciate you. Hammer the subscribe button, 3 and out. We got our own channel. Make sure you subscribe. If you listen to the audio version, I know I do, go to Apple, go to Spotify, go wherever you listen to your podcast. We got you covered. Hit that subscribe button. Appreciate everyone who's new to the show. We love you. And if you're not, come on in, baby. Doors wide open. And of course, 3 and out merch. We got it on thevolume.com, thevolume.com. Go search 3 and out merch and get yourself a hat. But first, before we dive in to some Eagles 49ers thoughts, how about we do a little exercise? Grab your cell phone, and when you grab your cell phone, go to your apps. Type in a little app called Gametime. They happen to be the official ticketing app of this podcast. Do you want to go to a game? Do you want to get out of the house and enjoy yourself? You want to go to a concert? Do you want to go to a comedy show? Well, I have you covered. Here's what you do. You sign up for a pair of tickets, anything, college, pro, concerts, comedy shows, you name it. And then you type in the promo code JOHN and get $20 off. Go enjoy yourself and do it on me. In these inflationary times, throwing you a $20 discount, how do you beat that? Hint, you don't. So go have a good time. Do it on us, promo code JOHN. And I don't even need to thank you. Just hammer that promo code. Download the Gametime app, promo code JOHN. Eagles, 49ers. Let's be real. We were robbed of a game last year. Now, I've never thought the Eagles didn't win it fair and square. They knocked out Brock Purdy. But the moment Purdy went down, and given he was their third-string quarterback, they had Josh Johnson, who then also got a concussion. The 49ers played a half where they couldn't throw the forward pass. The Eagles could have won that game playing 7 guys on defense. It was not a fair fight once the Eagles created the mismatch, right? But now we get at least hopefully a precursor of what's going to come again in the playoffs. Because I think we all would say that the game coming in the NFC Championship game is Eagles 49ers. I think it would be an upset at this point if it isn't those two teams. And I've been thinking long and hard about, like, Jalen Hurts is a guy that, you know, I did not like a lot coming out of college because I didn't think he was a good enough passer. And he's blown by my expectations and anyone that watches football, right? If you watch college football, no one would have acted like Jalen Hurts was going to become what he's become on the field right now, right? Just like the Eagles would have told you when they drafted him in the second round, they never thought he was going to be this. And I was watching the Tiger Woods press conference today. He's making his comeback after a $70 million surgery to have a fused ankle. The dude's got a fused back, a fused ankle. And unlike a lot of younger athletes, right? He's in his late 40s. He has hundreds of millions of dollars in the bank. He has an unlimited amount of accolades. So at this point, he's just playing for the love of the juice, right? Like, I gamble because if I go put $1,000 on Cowboys Seattle Thursday night and I win the bet, once I actually win the bet, it doesn't do as much for me as the 3 hours of watching the game. So even if I win $900, right, if I bet a minus 110, the juice and the action of that game is basically what I'm paying the $1,000 for. Now, if you lose, it sucks, but it's also the juice and being on the edge of your seat. That's why athletes compete, right? To be in the arena, to the competition. It's why these guys, you're able to pay Steph Curry $50 million, Patrick Mahomes $50 million, and you see zero drop-off in their effort, right? Because it's not ultimately about the money when you're actually playing. And one thing I underestimated with Jalen, and this is the hardest part about the scouting community, because I say it all the time, in any other industry, if I'm acquiring a $30, $40, $50 million a year company, $200 million purchase, acquiring assets, I have a pretty good idea on an Excel spreadsheet of its liabilities, of its cash flow, of what I need to be worried about, of some of the long-term question marks. of its fixed costs. Like everything's pretty black and white. Yet when I draft a player, I can't measure the stuff upstairs. I can't measure your wiring. I can do a lot of research on it. I can feel pretty good about how seriously you take football, how much you care, but I don't ultimately know until I'm around you. And it's why people often complain, like, how do you keep missing on these draft picks? Because these draft picks are human beings, right? Human beings change. I'm dramatically different at 39 years old than I was at 35 years old, let alone 25 or 20 years old. If you ain't growing, you're dying. And I think most human beings would probably agree. We change with time. Successes, failures, money, family, you name it. We grow. We just, and not always positively. And the one thing you see with Jalen, and this is the thing I respect the most, is how seriously he takes football. Like this thing, like, listen, they get to play a kid's game for a lot of money, and ultimately it's fun. But I don't care what you do, whether you're a musician, whether you're a football player, whether you're a podcast, everything eventually becomes a job. And whether a lot of people aspire to do what you're doing, a lot of people want to be sitting in your seat, you never want to take that for granted. But when you're paid or when your job is to do something, whatever that may be, you better take it pretty seriously, you know? And I think that at least the quarterbacks that I've grown up, especially in my high school to present day life, watching Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, Drew Brees, Aaron Rodgers, Patrick Mahomes now, they take this shit seriously. Like, this ain't just a side hobby. Hell, this ain't just, I kind of like football. This is a way of life. And now your personality shows through it. But I think specifically when you watch Peyton and Tom, it was like, God damn, that they are not screwing around when it comes to football. And I think the same thing with Jalen Hurts. And now listen, his mannerisms when he scores and he doesn't celebrate, like his focus, it's like he's a coach on the field. And he said over and over what he's taken from Nick Saban. When you think Nick Saban, you think, God, that is a serious MFer, right? And when I think Jalen Hurts, I think very, very seriously. But he's not serious in the sense where he can't interact with anyone because his teammates swear by the guy. And I think part of that is whenever you are working with or working for, and let's face it, when you're the quarterback, everyone's kind of underneath you, especially on the pay scale. They kind of look at you like you're the guy. When you walk in the building, the team goes as you go, right? The Eagles, when they're playing like shit, usually Jalen's playing like shit. When Jalen starts throwing touchdowns, making big plays, they start looking a lot better. Like he's the heartbeat of the team. And you have to be able to depend on these guys. And I always, like, one of the reasons I turned on Trey Lance in terms of a player, I'm like, yeah, I just get rid of him. I'm over this. Because I saw the players. And I put a lot of stock into what elite players think about their teammates. When they put all their chips in the middle of the table and they go, I love this guy. I want to play with this guy. Even when he has limitations, I go, God, they must bring something to the table that we don't get to see. And I saw the 49ers do that for a long time with Jimmy Garoppolo, who was a very limited player, but they really liked him. And being liked by your teammates matters a lot, but not just gaining like respect from them is through your work ethic, is through your toughness, and is through knowing that you are reliable in game. It doesn't mean you're always going to win, but it means that you will do everything humanly possible to help your team. And I think Jalen obviously has been very productive and they've won a lot of games, but this is why they turned on Carson Wentz, because Jason Kelsey, Fletcher Cox, Brandon Graham, these guys, Lane Johnson, saw something in this guy that is not quantifiable. And listen, he has quantifiable skills. He throws a great deep ball. He's an excellent athlete. He's a great runner of the football. I mean, he's got 11 touchdowns through 10 games. Like he's going to get 15 touchdowns on the ground on top of 28 that he's going to throw. So he's going to accumulate, 45 total touchdowns, right? When you think about some of those guys like throwing 40, 45, 50 touchdowns, most, especially the pocket quarterbacks, the Bradys, the Mannings, they're not running for any. So if Jalen throws 30 touchdowns and accounts for another 15 with his legs, like that's the same fucking thing. Like he scores a lot of points. And you got to be, it's a production-based business, right? You win, you lose. You help your team win or you lose. You either get the job done or you don't. You get fired, you get cut. Like it's the ultimate meritocracy. Like Frank Reich said it. Like, listen, I like Dave Tepper. I have a lot of respect for him, but this is a business, and I didn't get the job done. I got fired. Like, it's understandable. He didn't fire me because we're 6-5. We're 1-10, right? We fucking suck. And I think you go back to Jalen, his separating factor, and still to the moment against the Bills, from the moment he got into the league, is upstairs, his mind. And it goes back to some of the incidents over the course of his career. Last year, Sirianni lightened him up, unfazed. Didn't yell back. Not that he can't. If he wants to yell back, that's fine. You got to be able to take that. And mental toughness, to me, with athletes, but I think in the business community, is what separates people. Because it's so easy. Anyone, when things are going well, you're making a lot of money, you're winning a lot of games, you're throwing a lot of touchdowns, right? If you're a movie star, your fucking movies are a hit. It's easy to be excited. It's easy to want to get out of bed and enjoy life. How about when shit's going poorly? How about when you lost 4 games in a row? How about when you're injured? How about when your team's not as good? Those are the type guys ultimately you want. And it's hard, right? And this is the hardest part about scouting. How do I quantify what they've been through? Well, look at this quarterback matchup. Jalen, now listen, he had first-class college problems. He was at Alabama. He got benched. He was told by Nick Saban, you're not good enough. We don't want you to be the starting quarterback. And then he went to Oklahoma, and he had an elite year, right? But he was told, like, whether it's Nick Saban or whether you're at Fresno State, if you're told you're not the starter, like, I'm sorry. Brock Purdy begged Power 5 better programs to give him a scholarship. They wouldn't. He was Mr. Arizona. And I looked up today, in 2019, the all Big 12 quarterback, first team, was Jalen Hurts. The all Big 12 second team was Brock Purdy. Then Jalen Hurts goes to the NFL, 2020, 2021, first team all Big 12 quarterback, Brock Purdy. And I see similarities. Now, Jalen has more physical ability. He's got a better arm. He's a better runner, and he's just bigger and stronger. But I think both guys upstairs, one of the reasons that one guy's a second-round pick, came in with Carson Wentz, was never going to start, wasn't named the starter. Like this, most people thought it was a fucking crazy pick by Howie Roseman. When you're the 7th-round pick, no one's even paying attention to you. I didn't even think the guy was going to make the team. And now, for whatever, 4 or 5 years later with Jalen Hurts, he's a superstar. 2 years later with Brock Purdy, like, as he goes, the 49ers go. Like, when he's throwing touchdowns, they're winning. So it just shows you sometimes going through a little adversity, having the mental fortitude, you have to have it. It's impossible to not have mental toughness and be a good NFL player. It's definitely impossible to be a high-end NFL quarterback. And I think Jalen has it in spades, and I've seen it with Purdy as well. So very, very excited for this game. Massive, massive matchup. I think there's more on the line for the 49ers because ultimately, like, the Eagles are going to be the 1 seed. I'm sorry, they just are. So the Niners are going to have to go on the road again. And the Eagles have just beat the Chiefs and the Bills in knockdown, drag-out games. I would imagine they're going to be a little gassed for this. They do not need to win this game. To me, the Niners do. If the Niners don't win it, coming off extra rest on Thursday, it'd be hard to take them as seriously against the Eagles in the playoffs. Right? I think if they win this game, it doesn't mean the Eagles are not going to win in the playoffs, but it makes this game just I think it has a chance to have a little bit, especially the way the NFL is shaping out, like when I was a kid with the Cowboys and the 49ers. Like whoever won that game was going to win the Super Bowl. I think that's probably the case. And the best part, like those games, we're going to get it twice. It happened forever with Peyton Manning when it was with the Colts and the Patriots. It's like whoever's winning that game, and the Patriots won a lot more than Peyton did, was going to win the Super Bowl. So I'm fucking fired up.
Can you believe we're this deep into the NFL season? We got to make every second count. With DraftKings Sportsbook, you can make the most out of every game. Bet on your favorite teams for a shot at winning big bucks. New customers can score $150 instantly in bonus bets for betting $5 on any matchup. So right now, get in on the action with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Download the app now and use the code JOHN. New customers can score $150 instantly in bonus bets for betting just $5 on the NFL. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook with code JOHN. The crown is yours.
Adam Schefter told Pat McAfee that he thought 7 to 10 job openings this I guess, would be Black Monday, that week. There's already been a couple, right? The Panthers fired their coach. The Raiders have fired their coach. I wrote down, the Chargers, I think we all think are going to fire their coach. The Bears, I'm sorry, Eberflus, you're 7-24, like you're done. I think the Patriots, I think it's fair to say that Belichick's not going to be the coach moving forward. Washington, Ron Rivera is not going to be the coach. And then there are a lot of curveballs, right? Like Tampa, Todd Bowles, New Orleans with Dennis Allen. I don't even know. Maybe there's a couple, like, could Sean McVay just go to Amazon for $20 million a year? I'm sure there are a couple. Mike Vrabel, the conversations won't die, even though I think that's crazy, but it is what it is. So there are going to be a ton of openings, even if there are just 7. Ask yourself this. Are there 7 candidates? Are there 7 candidates right now that you would feel good about? Start naming them. Like, even if you're listening to this, you're probably a big football fan. Like, who is – and let's assume this. Jim Harbaugh is not some guarantee to leave Michigan. As Colin says, his dad lives next to him. He fucking loves the place. They've stuck by him. His team's sweet. He's really got the thing rolling. Why can't he become a Kirby or a Nick Saban? I mean, what if he wins the national championship this year? What if he wants to win another one? There's no guarantee. I think we all assume that, but he's been there for a long time now. I don't have great faith to be like, oh, Nick Saban or Jim Harbaugh is definitely coming back. So if he doesn't come back, beside the Lions guy, like, who are the great coordinators? Who's like, oh, that's the next Sean McVay or Kyle Shanahan? To me, do you know what this is shaping up? Bill Belichick is going to be the pick of the litter. He is going to be the team or the guy that teams are going to want because he does a couple things for you right away. Let's face it. He steals headlines. If you're the Chargers or you're the Bears and you hire Bill Belichick or Washington, you don't think like, I'm sorry, I don't care how shitty these last couple years have gotten. Google the fucking resume. It would make waves. Now, obviously, the story, the moment he is relieved of his duties, the Patriots are cool with trading him. However that would work, that would be a big story. But whenever he goes somewhere else, it'll be by far one of the biggest stories in recent memory when it comes to coaches. Think about Sean Payton this year. He's a great example. I think hiring coordinators, let's say the Bills were to fire Sean McDermott. Can you afford with Josh Allen, same thing with the Chargers and Justin Herbert, to risk it on a coordinator? Can you do that? Like, if you listened yesterday, you know the information I've been told by people in the league about Brian Daboll. It ain't pretty inside. So you just think next year it's going to get better? Like, I don't. You think he's just going to change his ways? What if these coaches want to leave? What if they have a whole new staff? Right? Their quarterback situation is a disaster. They just won a meaningless game, so it's going to be harder for them to get one of the top quarterbacks. And this notion that every coordinator is just some can't-miss guy, it's like quarterbacks in the draft. And I thought Sean Payton early, like most people, like, this is crazy. This is not going to work. But there's a reason they pay him $18 million a year. He knows what he's doing. And he can handle being a head coach. Because being a head coach is about more than calling plays. It's about more than, developing a scheme against a certain defense. It's about knowing when to get rid of a locker room cancer. It's about supporting your coaches. It's about being hard on your coaches. It's about supporting your players. It's about being hard on your players. It's about managing the entire operation. And a lot like quarterbacks, anyone can handle and pump their chest out when you're winning. You win a couple games in a row, everyone's on their knees giving you a reach around. Oh, that's great. Yeah, it's easy. How about when you lose 3 in a row? How about when your team gives up 70 freaking points? Everyone thinks you're a fraud. Everyone wants you to fire their coordinator. Everyone thinks all your players suck. Can you keep the ship from sinking to the bottom of the lake, from just hitting the iceberg like the Titanic and just going under and everyone dying and the season being a waste, like last year with Nathaniel Hackett? And he can. Now, are the Broncos going to win the Super Bowl this year? I don't think so. Are they even a lock to make the playoffs? Of course not. But I think we all have to acknowledge, like, Sean Payton knows what he's doing. Is he, Belichick in his prime or Andy Reid? Probably not. But is he pretty freaking good relative to the rest of the NFL? Hell yeah. Hell yeah. So I think when you're hiring these coaches, and if you're a team, if you're the Chargers and you're paying all this money to Justin Herbert, I can't afford to hire a coordinator. I can't risk hiring. I don't care how awesome the coordinator's resume looks. What if it's just one of those guys that flops? Then I just waste more time with the quarterback. I'm paying all this money. How is Bill Belichick not the guy? Right now, maybe Bill doesn't want to come to California. He's a Northeast guy, likes kind of that corridor, which I get it. We all are product of what we like, right? I like the West Coast. Though, I'd move to Nashville or Jupiter, Florida tomorrow if it made sense, if it penciled, right? Maybe eventually I do. But as you get older, maybe things change. Maybe it's just professionally you look for the best opportunity. And I think he's gonna be hard pressed. The Chargers are much more equipped to win if they have Herbert than the unknown of drafting one of these rookie quarterbacks. So I think everything he went through the last couple of years with Mac Jones has to probably push him toward dealing with a veteran. And the moment he becomes available, and let's face it, he's going to become available. He's not going to coach the Patriots next year. If you watched him, like it's over. And sometimes divorces aren't just like everybody hates each other. Sometimes just like, it's time. Like it's time. Not every breakup is contentious. Sometimes like, listen, I mean, it's hard. It's emotional. You have a lot of equity built up if you're the Crafts and you're Bill, but sometimes it's just time. And I think it's just kind of time. And I think the Chargers make a lot of sense for Bill. One thing I was looking at is the AFC playoff picture. A lot of people have been like, call your segment the herd hierarchy, but do it the middle and just do all the middle teams. I was thinking like, could I call it like the mud and just do the worst teams? I haven't quite figured it out. It hasn't quite come together in my mind. And I think about it a lot, trying to find a specific name to do something different. Cause like people hit me in the DMs and they're right. Like anyone can, rank the top teams. Like everyone does different versions of that. Now ranking the shitty teams, that would get kind of boring. I do think the middle would be kind of fun. And when I say the middle, like some of the fringe wild card teams, some of the teams right on the outskirt. But I did look at the playoff picture today and I saw that, in the AFC, basically 5 through 10. So there are 6 teams for basically 3 spots. The Steelers are 5. The Browns are 6. The Colts somehow are 7. Texans, Denver, Buffalo. And what I think is crazy, and I said this yesterday, I've never seen a team get more credit for getting yards, but not many points than the Pittsburgh Steelers last week against a Jake Browning-led Bengals. It's like, we got 422 yards. It's like, oh, shit, you score 30. What do you win the game by, 30-13? No, we won it 16-10, but we're headed in the right direction. It's like, Jesus, the bar is low, which, in fairness, the bar was low. But, again, think about the last time a team made a coordinator change and you talked about, like, yards. Hey, they've been scoring 15 points. They scored 27 points. It was awesome. They scored 16 points. Belichick said this forever. Yards are so overrated. If I lead the league in yards allowed, but I have the number 1 scoring defense, who cares? Red zone defense matters, right? Holding you to field goals, not touchdowns, turnovers, how many yards I give up. To me, it's somewhat of a hollow stat in the sense of, are you converting those to points, right? Are you doing anything with that? So I think the Steelers, listen, they're going to make it. They play the Bengals again just based on their schedule. But I didn't see anything last week that would make me feel stronger about where they're going. And then the Browns. I would say that's one team that I'm a little nervous about. One, their star player just got injured, right? He had an MRI. He's day-to-day. But if Myles Garrett is not 100%, that's a big problem for them. And 2, I'm sorry. As long as Dorian Thompson-Robinson is your quarterback, I'm not taking you seriously. And I said this, I think I tweeted this out during the game when he got rocked in Denver. And they threw a flag for, I don't even know what unsportsmanlike conduct, late hit, whatever the fuck on the quarterback. The defender in my mind did nothing wrong. Maybe he launched a little bit. To me, he's excelling through the quarterback. It was on the backup quarterback for running out basically right into the guy. And I am the number 1 proponent. Part of the reason football has separated over the years, and it's in its own little world right now as the number 1 television property in America, is because of the star quarterbacks and because of offense. It's not even disputable. So I'm all for protecting Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts, whoever. The guys, Dak Prescott, the guys that matter on the big teams that are printing the money. I'm sorry. I don't think the rules should apply to the backups. Like the moment your backup quarterback starts the game, I'm going to be a little more liberal with how I call some of these late hits, because some of these late hits are on the player. He just scrambling around like a duck with his head cut off, and then he gets mollywopped because he doesn't know where he's going. Like, why does he deserve the benefit of the doubt? One thing I saw Tom Brady talk about, and I agree, this notion with this word defenseless, we're on a football field. If you play peewee football, let alone high school football, all the way to the pros, nobody is ever defenseless on a football field. So when you're going over the middle of the field, nobody is defenseless. He knows other people are there. But a quarterback, part of it is like, get rid of the ball. Why? Because you can get hit. So I'm a big proponent of backup quarterbacks not getting the same treatment as the star quarterbacks. Protect the star quarterbacks, piss people off on social media with kind of weak calls, all for it. We need those guys. But Dorian Thompson-Robinson getting the same treatment. Steph Curry and Kobe Bryant and LeBron James get a different level of treatment than Jordan Poole and whoever else scrubs are in the NBA. They're not all treated the same. Why? They're not equals. In sports, equality doesn't exist. Some guys, more important, more valuable, just like the private sector and in business. I would treat the backup quarterbacks the same. So as long as you're rolling out DTR and PJ Walker, your defense is awesome, but this isn't 1987. You're not going anywhere. I'm sorry. Indy, maybe I'm going to be late to the party, and Gardner Minshew has made some plays, and honestly, I just looked at their schedule. Their next couple games are like the Titans and someone else shitty. I mean, they're going to find a way probably to win some games. I mean, to continue to win some games, though they're also the type team, like, are they guaranteed to beat the Titans with Minshew? It's pretty incredible what they've done. If they were to make the playoffs this year with Gardner Minshew, you could give this guy votes, Shane Steichen. You really could as coach of the year. But I'm going to be shocked. Like, to me, I like teams 8, 9, and 10 more than any 5, 6, or 7. Now, the Steelers, just based on record, they're getting their minimum getting to 10, and I think they'll probably get to 11. This is a huge game this weekend between Houston and Denver. Whoever wins that game, especially if Denver to win it, I think we'd start talking like, could they be a wild card team? And I'm sorry, like, if Josh Allen's going to play like that, you have to understand, if Josh Allen played like that against, I don't know, 95% of the NFL, like remove the Niners, the Eagles, and maybe the Chiefs if Mahomes was having an out-of-body experience, they're winning that game. They're winning that game. So everyone acting like the Bills just shit the bed and losing that game is crippling to, where they were because of their record. But it doesn't end them. If that is the way they're going to play, they're going to win games. So I still take Buffalo seriously. Not seriously as like some Super Bowl contender, but I would not just count them out because they lost that devastating game to the Eagles. One thing I've been thinking about, it's been in my head since watching some of that Houston-Jacksonville game, is, do you know what's crazy is how fast things change? It's what I love. It's why I like the stock market. It's why I like talking players and coaches in football. Everything's fluid. I mean, you can have some long bets, right? Player in a company, but you better be ready to pivot. Like, if you love Bryce Young, okay, totally get it. But if he still looks like this in a year, like, you're going to have problems. And you're eventually going to have to look in the mirror and admit it to yourself, right? Nobody liked Brock Purdy coming out. We all have to admit he's pretty freaking good, right? It's just a fact. So I think when you look at C.J. Stroud relative to Trevor Lawrence, I think for the next 5 years, I would take C.J. Stroud. And if you factored in the money, like, part of it is Trevor is, if I'm the Jags, like, I'm not paying Trevor after this season. I would pay him after his 4th year. But C.J. Stroud would be in year 2. He still got multiple years on his rookie contract before I even have to pick up his 5th-year option. So right now, C.J.'s numbers compared to him obviously are a lot better. He has 7 more touchdown passes and 2 less interceptions. Now, Trevor's a little more accurate, but you can't watch that game. And listen, I'm not trying to act like Lawrence is some scrub. I think a lot of people do that when a guy struggles. Like, can we have a conversation? Like, yeah, we're having a conversation. He's not as good as we thought he was going to be. What's the conversation? You want to act like he fucking sucks? No, he doesn't stink. He's not Derek Carr or Baker Mayfield or anything. Desmond Ridder. But he's not playing as well as the hype. He was compared to Andrew Luck, and Andrew Luck immediately was dramatically better. So I think we have to acknowledge this guy's not Andrew Luck. Just because you're not Andrew Luck doesn't mean you're not a playoff level guy, which he is. But relative to the way he was, kind of anointed, CJ Stroud, for a guy that went second overall, did not have the momentum of like, oh, this guy's some can't miss, going to be some great player. And that's what makes the draft fun, right? Because if every time we just anointed a guy that's a can't miss, drafting would be easy. But we know that's not the case. So I would say if you're the Houston Texans, you got to be pretty excited. Okay, one more quick thing. That Ohio State-Michigan game, one, was fantastic. But two, how many teams that have, an elite coach, a Kirby Smart, a Nick Saban, a whoever, Lincoln Riley. We could argue how good Lincoln Riley is, but the Lincoln Riley before we viewed him this year could go on a 3-game stretch and finish it off against, not just your rival, but clearly one of the best 4, 5, 6 teams in the country, even at home, and win the game. It's one thing if you're just beating the shit out of them, but play a tight game and find a way to win it. And I think the answer is slim to none. I just do. I do not think an assistant coach, even if the other guy got to coach all week, would make that big of an impact on game day of just when things got tight, could handle it. Michigan lost, a guy that's going to go in the top couple rounds, their team captain, star guard. Now you can say it's a guard, but still, dude had his leg shattered. I saw J.J. McCarthy say, when I looked down and I saw one of my teammates holding his ankle in place, that's a sight I wouldn't wish upon anybody. And I just saw Joel Klatt posted something that, the vibe of that play and them chanting his name. He said it was just an emotional time in there. Next play, Corum scores a touchdown. But one thing I think that an underappreciated part of Jim Harbaugh is how good he is at hiring assistants. I think Harbaugh's ability to not only hire elite assistants, but capable young guys, mentor them, and put them in positions is like one of his most underrated attributes. Because when you think Jim Harbaugh, you just think this physical team, his defense is always good, his run game's always good. I don't think we do a good enough job of talking about his assistants. And Sharon Moore, the interim coach, his offensive coordinator, his O-line coach. I mean, 6-7 years ago, the guy just was hired as a tight end coach. I mean, this guy's like 37 years old. He played for Bob Stoops at Oklahoma. He's just clearly a football guy. And they did not skip a beat. And I heard Coward have his take was like, anytime a business can lose the leader and not skip a beat, that speaks to the leader is kind of good at what he's doing. Like Jim Harbaugh the last 3 years. Here's the other thing. I often have said that, when it comes to the sign stealing stuff, I thought it was a little overhyped and we made a bigger deal of it than it was, though it was a juicy story. Like, what do you even say now? Obviously, Ohio State would have changed their signs. Harbaugh wasn't even there, and they beat him in a big game, a tight game. So, like, Ryan Day actually earned my respect more in that loss than he has in any previous game I've ever watched him play. Like, that was an impressive loss. His team was physical. His team didn't get just, like, shoved around. They just weren't good enough. Now, he kind of gets tight in big moments, and ultimately, as quarterback, he has a big downgrade from last year to this guy. But, like, listen, I'm not one to act like Ryan Day some scrub, though I hear a lot of people act like it's insane that Ryan Day should be fired, where, yeah, no one's acting like if he's fired, he's Jimbo Fisher or Tom Allen at Indiana, but you're paid a premium at Ohio State. You're talking $9-10 million. He is the highest salary pool in the country, meaning his assistants. He has 5 assistants in college that are paid over $1 million a year. It's one thing to lose to Jim Harbaugh. It's another thing to lose to a 37-year-old O-line coach. It just is. I'm sorry. So I understand there's a difference in a message board acting like Ryan Day sucks ass. It just needs to be run out of town. Yeah, that's stupid. But to go, is this guy good enough? Is this guy good enough? I always hear like, well, how do you You're Ohio State. You pay an unlimited amount of money. You're not A&M, who has to pay just to kind of be relevant. You pay a premium because you're also a premium. And like, if he can't beat Michigan, that is a major problem. Now, he's obviously not going anywhere this year, you would think. But if he were to lose to Michigan again next year, even if he wins all these other games, I'm sorry. Like, I'm going to feel no sympathy if they fire him. Here's the other thing. The Big Ten is going to get a lot more difficult next year. So just playing Rutgers and Maryland and Minnesota, like those games, those days are kind of over. Oregon, Washington, even USC and UCLA, who are down, are better than those programs. Now, Wisconsin, Penn State, like it's just going to be more difficult. And I've always supported, I think depth in your conference when making the argument around bowls is a little overrated. The only importance of your conference at the end of the year is how good are your good teams. Now, if we want to value like how great the wins are, but like whether we're nitpicking an Alabama win, Alabama's really good. Georgia is excellent. Ohio State and Michigan are awesome, right? So if Rutgers sucks, if Maryland sucks, if Iowa sucks, whatever, we know those two teams are good. Like the Pac-12, like, might have even been in a weird way, got overrated because everyone was nostalgic that they were leaving. But like their two teams, Oregon and Washington, are really good. So I think that Harbaugh has just always put together a really good staff. And this weekend was on big time display. And to me, that's the argument against Ryan Day. Yeah, that guy's going to be a head coach eventually, I would imagine, right? But you're not allowed to lose to him. You're just not. Like Brian Kelly. He's getting bailed out a little bit because he might have the Heisman Trophy, but I can't pay you $90 million and you lose to Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss. You're allowed to lose to Georgia and Alabama. Ideally, we'd like to beat those guys every once in a while, and he did last year. You're not allowed to lose to Ole Miss. It's not acceptable. Like, you can lose to Florida State week one. That's okay. Not allowed to lose to Ole Miss. It cannot happen. And that's one thing that's Ryan Day's argument is like, I'm losing to nobody except him. But it gets to a point where, like, you have to beat him. You do. And right now, that program, I have zero affiliation with that area of the country. That game's fucking awesome. That game is badass. I mean, it really is. There's a level of, like Auburn, Alabama, for example. I watched a lot of that game. Auburn had just lost to New Mexico State. It's your classic rivalry game where they're clearly not as good as Alabama, but it's on the road. They're going to play them tight, and it's just cool to watch. Same thing with Washington and Washington State. The talent discrepancy of the two teams is wide, but it's kind of, David versus Goliath. That Michigan, Ohio State, all like Duke and North Carolina in basketball when they're both good. It's like Goliath versus Goliath. And there's something kind of cool about Goliath versus Goliath, right? And that's what makes that rivalry so badass. It never really feels like the little engine that could versus the big bad wolf. It's always like, no, these are two behemoths. It's like Amazon versus Google. And it's hard. You just don't see that anywhere else, right? You don't, in any of the rivalry games, they weren't even remotely close. They were enormous spreads, even though they were close. And part of what makes it intriguing to watch, like when Jalen Milroe has to make that pass to barely beat Auburn, it's like, God, could Auburn pull off this crazy upset? There is no upset in Michigan, Ohio State. It might as well just be a pick'em game, right? And just a great product. Okay, before we get out of here, it's time for this week's player I thought might give almost anything to redo his game. Brought to you by Uber Eats. A lot of respect for this guy. He's a journeyman. He's been about, it feels like 20 different teams in the NFL. He started for, I think, 3 or 4, definitely 3 teams over the last calendar year. The Titans, the Cardinals, Minnesota. But you play Monday Night Football and you throw 4 interceptions, and your coach after the game was like, yeah, I was thinking about benching him for Nick Mullins. I think Joshua Dobbs, the hype train, and he earned it. This wasn't just created hype. It was substance behind it. Kind of ran out of gas. So I think Joshua Dobbs would be one of those guys. Monday Night Football. You can argue it's an awful game. Millions of people are watching. You throw all those interceptions, even if some of them are tipped off, guys' hands or helmets. That's a tough box score to see, and to lose a game when the other team, can't score a touchdown. I think Joshua Dobbs is an example of a guy that would like that one back. So that's this week's almost anything player of the week. And you can order almost anything with Uber Eats, the official on-demand partner of the NFL.